Okay, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us here at Mineola Middle School. I'd like to acknowledge Mineola Superintendent Michael Nagler. Michael? And Middle School Principal Matt Gavin is with us. Matt? And we just completed an amazing tour of this wonderful school district where we had the opportunity to view some state-of-the-art technology that's being utilized in teaching our youngsters. This impact here is something that the governor and the state wishes to expand to all school districts and give every child an opportunity to access this important learning tool. With the Smart Schools Bond, we can fundamentally reshape the learning environment for today's students and better empower them to grow and become thriving members of New York's 21st century economy. Here in Mineola Middle School, technology plays a central role in the classroom, and students benefit from having access to the latest programs and equipment. We just viewed an amazing 3D presentation where students are viewing an eyeball in 3 dimensions. It really is amazing, and you can just see, as I compare it to my childhood learning, the advances that this technology brings to our students. So it's wonderful to be here today with the great governor of New York State, Governor Cuomo, and it's my honor to introduce the Deputy Secretary of Technology, Rachel Hout.
Thank you. Thank you so much, County Executive Mangano. And it's truly exciting to be here today. Thank you so much to Mineola for hosting us. I can't imagine a better setting to host today's presentation of the Smart Schools Report, which explores how we can better equip our classrooms for the future. As Governor Cuomo stated in the State of the State speech when he introduced the Smart Schools Act, education is critical to our future. And the Smart Schools Act will invest $2 billion to help to prepare our schools across the state for the future. I want to thank all of the presenters. Over the past several months, the Smart Schools Commission has met several times, and we've had presenters from education, from technology, from infrastructure, who have shared best practices and lessons learned. They come from across the state, they serve diverse populations, but they all share a common goal, which is to prepare our students for the future. And that's what we're here to learn about today. Today, shortly, you will hear from commission members on the key highlights of how we can prepare our classrooms for the future and our students for the 21st century economy. You will hear from Constance Evelyn, who is the superintendent of Auburn District in Cayuga County. You will hear from Eric Schmidt, the chairman and former CEO of Google, and you will hear from Jeffrey Canada, the president of the Harlem Children's Zone. And we are just so excited to hear more about these incredible highlights and how we can invest and make our state even stronger. And with that, please join me in welcoming Connie Evelyn, who will start today's proceedings. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here with the governor and his staff and the fellow commission members to deliver the final report of the commission. I'm so glad to see that we have included our students in this opportunity. The governor's message really couldn't be more right in terms of the urgency that we are facing around ensuring that we integrate technology into our classrooms to transform the experience for our students, to prepare them for the job economy that they will enter. We live in a world where our students are digital natives. Many of us grew up as immigrants, and if we were lucky, perhaps in Generation X, we had access to technology later on in high school. But these babies are growing up in a world where not only do we hope that they have a one-to-one environment, but many of them are in a three-to-one environment using devices. And so, again, this work is urgent and important to enhance their advancement and their ability to be competitive. Again, the governor's message is urgent and important, and we've heard from many folks who have visited with us during our commission meetings, and they agree. Parents, students, educators agree that we must act now. This commission was created in response to the governor's call for us to leverage technology to transform our classrooms, again, to prepare our students, to better prepare our students for the economy that they will enter, which is skills and knowledge-based. We, again, have heard from folks across the state that have targeted 5 ways that technology can and will, and already does in some parts of the state, improve education. First, we see in classrooms, as you discussed earlier, that the level of engagement goes through the roof, right? When students understand the problem-based issues in ways that help them apply it to the real world. What we saw in that classroom was a 3-dimensional picture or hologram, or I don't know what to call it, Jeffrey, of an eye, and the lesson was about refraction, light refraction. And what it left me with the impression was that not only do I understand why I'm learning this and how it relates to my own body, but perhaps what profession I might go. I might want to be an eye doctor growing up after seeing that. And so it allows teachers to tailor the curriculum and lessons, to customize the lesson for each individual student, clearly extends learning beyond the classroom walls. And one of the things that became very apparent to us in our discussions was that technology really can be the great equalizer. It reduces and it tears down the walls of economic and geographic disparities, and it allows our children to have access to those courses, to that curriculum that perhaps because of those barriers they would not otherwise have access to. Always, always with the thinking that we are preparing our students for the world of work. Many of the things that we heard as we moved through this process were about the challenges that we face in New York State relative to access to broadband and to the devices themselves that would connect us to the world. More than 50% of our schools in New York State can't access more than 100 megabits of broadband, and we know that that's not adequate. I know that I can talk about Auburn schools. We have about 50 access points for my district of about 4,400 students, and in order to achieve wireless access, we need about 500. So how do we solve the problem? Proposing, the governor's vision is strategic, and he is proposing a $2 billion Smart Bonds Act. If approved by the voters on the 4th, each school district will receive an allocation based on the state aid formula for 2013-14. We as superintendents, when we received those numbers last year, we were made aware, the governor had the foresight to make us aware in those budget runs around what level of resource we would have moving forward. And we appreciate that. Uses for the Smart Bond money, the potential money, again, if approved on November 4th, include the purchase of learning technologies, equipment like interactive whiteboards, laptops, etc. Broadband connectivity is going to be critical, again, in my district and many others. And we've seen that districts are at different levels in terms of readiness to be able to implement integrated technology into the classroom. And so we appreciate the differentiation in terms of the ways that the resources can be used across the state. Construction enhancement, modernization of educational facilities to accommodate pre-K programs, to provide instructional space to replace classroom trailers, and I think that's particularly downstate, and the installation of high technology security and surveillance cameras in our schools, as we know that enhancing security and keeping our children safe and our educators safe is a top priority. So each district, in consultation with their stakeholders, parents, students, community members, must develop a smart schools investment plan for the Smart Schools Review Board. That review board will be made up of the Commissioner of the State Education Department, John King, Nancy Zimper, SUNY Chancellor, and Robert Megner from the Office of Division of Budget, I believe. So each school will be responsible to submit that investment plan to the review board in order to be able to access these resources. As Rachel said earlier, we hosted 3 public symposiums across the state, from one end of the state to the other, Albany, Buffalo, and New York City, with many, many people coming to share their experiences along the spectrum of implementation of integrating technology in meaningful ways in our classrooms in New York State. As a result of the feedback that we received, and not just from the symposiums, there were so many ways that folks could share their experiences with us, we were able to develop 7 keys to success as a part of our report today. One idea and recommendation was to embrace and expand online learning. And so here you see a classroom, again, in one of our schools in New York, using a classroom camera, 2-way communication in terms of being connected to the internet and being able to connect with other parts of the world, again, outside of the 4 walls of the classroom, and a synced tablet that provides what we call learning anytime, anywhere. The access, and it's always been about access in terms of ensuring that all children in New York State have access to high-quality education, truly is amplified by the integration of technology in our schools. It levels the playing field by ensuring that children who want to take an AP course that perhaps might be prohibitive in a district to offer because there's not enough students enrolled or interested in that particular course can now have access to that opportunity. Students that want to take that elective, again, that is prohibited by economic barriers will now have that opportunity. This picture reminds me of the superintendent that came to speak with us about his floating study halls, or rolling study halls. His district is a small district, 250 students, 250 square miles. And so he began to take a look at the time that his students spent on the bus and tried to, again, using technology, maximize their time spent on the bus to leverage learning outside of the 4 classroom walls. The second key to success is to provide individualized instruction using technology that lets students learn and advance at their own pace. I can't tell you how many parents have talked to us about them wanting to ensure that their children are getting a customized experience in our schools, right? When parents come to speak with us, they don't want to talk about everyone else's child. They want to talk about their child, right? How can you help my child? And technology closes that gap. And it also creates more engagement for parents because you can speak to them and provide feedback and them to you in a more immediate fashion. And so this is a picture of, again, children who look like they're in a one-to-one environment, working with software that probably works with them at their instructional level and, of course, aspires to help them reach the rigorous standards that we must have in New York State for preparedness in the 21st century. So, again, the software can provide multiple approaches to instruction for the classroom teacher, and students can address, and preparing teachers and students to address their individual needs. The third key to success is to connect every school to high-speed broadband. High-speed broadband enables the devices that you see in this particular slide, the interactive whiteboard, the interconnected tablets, and the laptop connected to Wi-Fi. And really it's important that we provide you with practical applications for why this is important. And why does student engagement go through the roof when they have access to these kinds of things? We saw, again, the 3-dimensional look at the eyeball today. But just think about what happens I don't know, in a 5th grade classroom when we're talking about the American Revolution that happened something like hundreds of years ago, and you're a 5th grade student. And then think about how the classroom would be transformed if you could be talking to students in Great Britain about their perception of the American Revolution, right? Now we're interested. Now we're interested as 5th grade students, not to say that we're not now, but it's more interesting. Now we understand why we're talking about it and what it means to me in my life today and what it meant to folks before, and how it gives them a more global view, right, of how history has unfolded. It gives them context. Broadband is a game changer. It's absolutely a game changer. I can't tell you how many times teachers have come to me and others frustrated about not being able to access information anytime, anywhere to support instruction. So we are very aware that broadband connectivity is a major issue in our schools, and so this is why we have identified this as one of the keys. It boosts students' ability to research, it boosts educators' ability to research, and it promotes decision-making based on, again, the needs of individual students and their ability level. The 4th key is to create a seamless transition from home to school so that every student has access. And you'll see that there's a running theme around access and equity, right? And those things are expensive. In America, we have the greatest public school system, and that's because we educate everyone, and that's a good thing. That's a great thing, but equity is costly, and technology will promote, again, that equity of access for learning anytime, anyway. And today, many students in New York lack basic internet access at home. We heard that from folks, particularly in the mid-state, and I know that exists in Long Island as well. And I think people would be surprised by the lack of connectivity that we have in Long Island. And so we know that this needs to be a critical part of how these resources should be and can be used. The 5th key is to ensure successful integration of technology by providing continuous professional development to teachers, principals, and staff. And we'll get to a point, again, a few minutes from now about planning, right? We have to make sure that these critical stakeholders understand how we can use these resources and that we plan that together. We don't want to digitize the status quo. We don't want to overlay old instructional practices on top of the technology that we integrate. We should be using technology to transform classrooms, to do things that we would never imagine that we could do in the past, things that were not conceivable. So coaching and mentoring provided by colleagues and third-party advisors is highly recommended by the Commission, and again, was talked about in all of the presentations and feedback that we received throughout the state. This is a huge return on investment. On average, teachers who receive just 49 hours of training can boost their student achievement by 21%. And teachers will tell you, and they told us actually, that you should be free in your thinking as an educator to allow students to help you as digital natives. They can help us, right? Implement technology and use it to implement best practice. And so again, this is a huge return on investment in terms of improving instructional practices, leveraging technology in the classroom, and actually building a more collaborative classroom, generally speaking, in partnership with your students. The 6th key to success is to prepare students for the 21st century workforce, to which we are 15% through. The learning environment needs to reflect that of today's workforce. We have really good schools in New York State, excellent schools, and we have an excellent school system. The rate of change, however, in terms of how technology has advanced and changed the job market really does force us to take a look at how we can leverage technology to best prepare our students as job seekers in this century. And we appreciate again, the opportunity to take a look at that across the state, and we appreciate the governor's vision around proposing this $2 billion Smart Schools money. STEM is here now, and we could be behind in terms of the preparation of our children. The career growth for STEM, science, technology, education, and math careers is 2.5% times the pace of non-STEM jobs that are being developed or that are available for each employed person. This is critical. It is critical that, again, we use technology to make sure that our students have access to the kinds of rigorous and problem-based experiences that will give them the habits of mind that will promote success in this century's workforce. There's a huge demand, again, on focus on STEM skills to ensure that students graduate to be competitive in this global economy. The seventh and final key to success is plan, and more planning. To be prepared to adapt to the needs of your district and to adapt to the needs of the economy. We heard this over and over again, that it's really important to invite all stakeholders to the table to identify a clear vision that should really be focused on the goals of instruction first, and then to do a survey of the existing technology that you have in your district and understand what your needs are to match, again, your instructional goals and the level of technology resource that you currently have in your district. And it should not end there. It should be an ongoing cycle. So again, that you find yourself prepared in an ever-changing world focused on technology. And so thank you for your attention. And I think that Rachel will take over at this point.
Thanks. Now we're going to hear from Eric Schmidt. Thank you so much, Connie.
I want to thank the governor for having this idea, and Rachel and your team for making this work. This has been an eye-opening experience for myself, and I think for the other commissioners as well. I've become convinced that the solution to pretty much every known problem in humanity is more broadband. I'm quite convinced the weather will be better, people will live longer, people will be happier, the economics will be much better, the children will have a better time at school, and I can go on. Now, you sit there and you think, why does he say that? Because the future is about knowledge workers and how we interact with each other. And we as Americans are enormously powerful when we are united to solve a problem, take an opportunity before us, and so forth. The key to that is to have broadband be universally available, not just to our students, but to our citizens and to everyone in the state. As Connie noticed, that there are more than 500 schools that do not have one, they don't have one connection that meets the broadband criteria that most of you have in your homes, right? That is a tragedy. There are more than 1 million people in New York State who cannot afford broadband in any form, right, for all the reasons that you could imagine. And in the commission's hearings, what disturbed me the most, having done this for a very long time, is the overwhelming and increasing gap between the have broadbands and the not have broadbands, to use a metaphor. So the fact of the matter is we have an elite, right, that's fiber connected in the cities and so forth that are going to do well. They're going to be the best educated, they're going to be ready, they're going to have STEM students and so forth and so on. But what about all those other people, right? And so we heard testimony from teachers that were trying desperately to get AP courses to the smart kid that really wants that in order to get to the right college, and they can't get it. That's a tragedy. That's a tragedy for the state, it's a tragedy for the country. Now, so I like to think of it in terms of, think about that student, right, who desperately wants to get out of his or her economic situation, and we can't get them the tools. They're already motivated, they want to do it, and so forth. They could be the next great entrepreneur, or the great legislator, or the great citizen, right? Broadband is the key to doing that. So New York State, by the way, is about 70% connected to broadband, which is slightly ahead of the average state. So New York State's not behind, but it's not the leader. And I think there's an opportunity here with this bond and with this conversation to really lead. So the solution is pretty straightforward. Wire all the schools and wire all the universities and the libraries. The schools, because that's where the kids are, and the libraries is where everybody hangs out if they don't have a broadband connection in their home. So you've then got an answer for your kids, and you've got an answer for your adults, especially the ones that are unemployed, can't find a job. It's all on the internet now, but they can't afford a broadband connection. That seems obvious. Another thing that we heard about that's important for schools is to have the policies encourage competition among broadband suppliers, because competition is how prices come down, and everybody wants a lesser expensive and higher connection. And then the third thing we heard was to allow schools to build buying cooperatives so they could merge their resources in order to get better prices. These are all eminently reasonable, and you'll see them in the report. What I'm also convinced about is that if we just get the schools, the libraries, the rural areas connected with reasonable broadband, which the state defines as 6 megabits, and I'll define as 100 megabits, and we'll compromise in between. The fact of the matter is, we just keep people connected a little bit. The teachers and the educators will do the rest. They want to use these tools. They know how to do it. We saw illustrations of that, and again, Connie mentioned to that. Furthermore, there's a large number of now new interactive software packages and so forth which are available to schools. So we don't need to reinvent all that. We just need to let the teachers use this stuff. They're smart enough. They care about it. They want to be great teachers, and they care a lot about this outcome. So to finish, what I would say to you is that we all benefited from people in the 40s and 50s who decided that the correct thing to do was to create the Federal Highway Trust Funds and all of the interstate system in America. They understood correctly, post-war, that would lead to an economic boom of commerce, trade, and interconnection for what were historically relatively isolated places in America. It changed the country. We have forgotten how disconnected it was, given the connectivity that we've all grown up with. The same principle applies to getting the state connected by broadband. Fiber everywhere is just as important. It is the core enabler to everything that the governor and I think everyone here in this room wants to make happen. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so much for your service. Thank you. And next we'll hear from Jeffrey Canada, followed by remarks by the governor.
Great. So I think I was the only kid in the South Bronx who knew what an aardvark was. That's not true, but I really thought it was. And there was only one reason I knew what an aardvark was. My mother did a huge investment for her. It was just unheard of. She invested in the World Book Encyclopedia. Now, most of you don't know what encyclopedias are, but I will tell you, it was the only way you could get sort of most of the world's knowledge in one place in your home, and it was hugely expensive, and people couldn't afford it, and my mother bought it on time. For those of you who don't know, you pay a little bit every month. It goes on and on and on. But right there, I thought I had all the world's knowledge, and when I got to college, I found out I didn't have nearly the world's knowledge, but here's the problem in lots of places in our state. Not only don't they have broadband, they don't have the equivalent of the encyclopedias. They are missing huge amounts of information, and technology has allowed us to bring literally the world's libraries to the fingertips of our young people. It is not fair, in my opinion, to have some places where kids can find out anything they want instantaneously, and other kids have no access to this at all. So the first time I heard about this commission, I realized that this was going to be important to the students of New York State. This is, I mean, you know what? Providing broadband and really up-to-date technology won't level the playing field, but it's a necessary prerequisite to leveling the playing field. You can get all the encyclopedias you want, no one opens the book, you're not going to learn anything. But without it, you cannot access information the way you should, and I feel like that's what it is with technology. I don't think this is a luxury. There are places where kids have all the technology they need, and it doesn't mean that those young people are guaranteed to be successful, but it certainly means they have an advantage over all the other kids who don't have that technology at their fingertips. And this is not an inexpensive proposition. Laying the fundamentals so that we have equal access to technology in this state is something that I care passionately about. I became a real believer. I wasn't quite sure how good technology was going to be about learning until my wife and I, we have grown kids, but we have our youngest kid is a student over at the Valley Stream Schools where we live in Valley Stream, and he's a senior this year. And when he was in about the 6th grade, he had a math problem. He came to me for help. Now, those of you who know me know that Eric went into the right business. He's probably very good at math. I am not. That is not my strong point. And so he has this question. I couldn't answer it, and he told me, well, there's this website that you could go on. And so I said, okay, let me go. And I was amazed what access to a great teacher and instruction could do, because I learned it. I mean, I had been taught this. Everybody had tried to teach me this. I was just incapable of learning it. But there was something about someone allowing you to go at your own pace without judgment, right? Because every time I messed up, I didn't get that feeling. You know how you messed up in front of the teacher, you're like, everybody's looking at me, I don't know the answer. I didn't get that feeling. I took my time. I learned it, and I thought, aha, this is a tool that can really allow young people to scale at a rate that I don't think we've ever dealt with before. I don't think we're there. I think we're just learning how to use this technology effectively. I was as blown away as everybody else looking at that 3D projection. But I will tell you, if you care about the kids in this state, if you care that we are really, as a state, going to remain competitive, this is you would not have a school without a library or books. We cannot have schools where kids don't have access to technology. It's just not fair. So I'm sort of, in it all the way. I'm hoping that we will not only get the technology, but then develop the knowledge base about how to use this technology in a way that really helps our students move forward. So that's what I wanted to say. But the reason I got into this was that the governor created this commission. This is the 2nd commission I've served on for this governor. And I'm going to just say a word about the governor before I think he talks about this product. Number one, I think people forgot what a laughingstock New York State was in terms of how people view the dysfunction at our state level. We could not get a budget passed on time. There was total dysfunction. The Republicans and the Democrats never talked to one another. It was just really a joke. Taxes were way too high. Education spending was going down. This governor has reversed all of that. We have the highest spending on education that we've ever had in the history of our state. We've passed on-time budgets 4 years in a row, something that's been unheard of. We have a governor who is committed to the children. And as importantly, I think really gets that this is all about jobs and how we bring jobs throughout this entire state. Upstate, downstate, the western parts, more rural places, we're thinking seriously about how it is we can improve the lot of everyone in New York State. And for this, I think the governor has been a true leader. This particular issue on technology, I think is really part of the infrastructure needed for us to do real ed reform. And the way we did ed reform under the government, we had Republicans, we had Democrats, we had business community, you had the advocates, and you had the unions all at the table at the same time trying to do what's right for children. I think that's the only way we're going to move forward. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the governor of New York State, Governor Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. First, let's start with a big thank you to Superintendent Michael Nagler, who organized all today. Thank you very much, Superintendent. Principal Gavin, thank you very much for your help. Let's give him a round of applause. You have a really fantastic county executive in Nassau. Ed Mangano is one of the really inspirational leaders, not just in the state, but in this country, and I've worked with them all. And let's give him a round of applause and thank him for being here. Now, the Smart Schools Commission, you had to be very smart to get on the Smart Schools Commission. That's why it's called the Smart Schools Commission. I, unfortunately, was not smart enough to get on the Smart Schools Commission. But I did find some very, very smart people to put on that Smart Schools Commission. Rachel Hout, first of all, is the dream for public service. You know how we talk about getting the best and the brightest to go into public service, who could do anything they want in the private sector, but choose to serve the community? That is Rachel Hout, and she ran the commission. Let's give her a round of applause. To Superintendent Evelyn, who is doing great innovative work, and she's looked to all across the state as one of the great innovative superintendents. We want to thank her and give her a round of applause for her presentation. Jeffrey Canada is an educational reformer who did what people said was impossible. People had given up on certain places and certain people in education. And we didn't say it, but we sort of decided as a society, you know, this is just a lost cause. And Jeffrey Canada took over that lost cause and showed that any child, anywhere, from any circumstance, can turn out to be a superstar. And he's done this state and this nation a great service. And it was an honor to have him on the commission. Jeffrey Canada. Now, Eric Schmidt, let me tell you a funny story about Eric Schmidt. I called him up a couple of years ago. I was in public service. He was in the private sector. He was in the high-tech world. I said, I have an idea for you. A search engine for the internet. And you call it Google. He said, Google, what type of name is that? I said, trust me, just go with it, Google. Eric Schmidt is an international superstar in this area, and that he took time for us to serve on this commission. I mean, he is an invaluable resource, and we owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude. Let's give him a round of applause, Eric Schmidt. And I think everything has been said. We have some young people in the room. This gets very simple at the end of the day. You'll see when you are a parent or a citizen, your fundamental driving instinct is to leave this place a better place than you found it. Your fundamental instinct is to do for your children, and to do more for your children than was done for you, and to leave you a better home and a better planet and a better society than we had. And people try to do that in different ways. Some people go into government to do it, some people do it in business, but the whole instinct is to help you and make this place better for you. The single best vehicle to do that is education. Why? First, for this country, education was the great promise. You know how people say you can go to America and become anything you want, and it doesn't matter where you come from, and you can be rich and you can be poor. The institution that did that is the educational system, the public educational system. No money. You didn't have to pay a penny. You went to the public school, and you could come from very poor parents. You could come from parents who didn't speak English. And from that public school, you could become President of the United States. My father came from Italian immigrants, very poor community. Parents didn't speak the language, went to public school, studied hard, got no help at home because his parents didn't really speak the language, they couldn't read the books, became governor of the state of New York, all through the public education system. When we think about your future, you're going to be competing with kids all around the globe. It's not like the old days. We were just competing with ourselves. This is now an international competition. You're going to be competing against kids from Asia, from all over the world. So our challenge is how to get you the best education possible so that when we're gone, you have the skills and you have the ability to do whatever you want to do. And you have the skills and the ability to accomplish any problem that you want to accomplish. So it comes down to education. As governor, I probably spend more of my time trying to change the education system than anything else. Why? It is very, very hard to change the education system. When you think about it, it's probably the single largest public monopoly in the United States of America. And change is hard in general. Change is hard personally. The more people you have, the larger the organization, the harder change is. To change the educational system that has done the same thing the same way for 40 years is very hard. And change is scary. So we're pushing very hard. Why? Because we have to. We have to. The educational system in the state of New York must improve. The educational system in the state of New York is dead in the middle of the other states. This is New York. New York, we're a little arrogant. We're the best. We're not going to settle for an average education system. And what's worse is our per pupil cost is the highest in the country. So we spend more money per pupil than any other state, and we're right in the middle in terms of performance. That's not okay. It is not okay on any level. And our kids deserve better than just an average education system. So we're doing everything we can to improve the education system. Master Teachers Program, so that teachers can continue to learn, and the more learning the teacher does, the more the teacher gets paid. Bonuses for high-performing teachers. For teachers that are not doing as well, we have extra assistance for lower-performing teachers. Teacher evaluations. Why? Report card for the teachers. They're not so crazy about it. Why? Because it's the first time, and now teachers get evaluated, and is it fair, and is it right? But we do the evaluation to know who needs help and who to replicate. So we're coming at changing the education system from a number of ways. I'm with Eric Schmidt and the Commission. The single best dramatic transformation is going to be technology. And when you think about it, education has probably been one of the few areas where technology has not been fully utilized. Technology has changed the medical profession. It's changed the music business, changed the communication system, changed the way you drive your car, changed the way you buy products. But it has not been as aggressively utilized in the school system. Why? Gets back to what I said before. It's hard to change the education system. Any change is hard. And also, there was not the same investment in education. You had a lot of R&D in technology in the other areas because it was a monetary reward for the product. You didn't have a market for innovation in education. And because you didn't have the market, you didn't have the investment. That we should be still buying billions of dollars of books to train students, to educate students. Who buys books anymore? Everybody walks around here, buy a Kindle or whatever device, but they're not buying books. Why isn't that all digital? Why isn't that all done and all on a tablet? It's been a very, very slow transformation. And the most profound point, I believe, is some schools don't even have the access, and that is the lack of broadband that Mr. Schmidt was talking about. What's even worse is it tends to be the poorer areas and the poorer schools that don't have the broadband, and they're actually the ones that need it the most, and they're the ones that don't have it. And the analogy to the interstate highway system is exactly right. President Eisenhower said, we'll build a highway system, we'll build the grid, and then the private market will do the rest. We lay the cable, we lay the fiber optics, and then the market will do the rest. But you have to build the infrastructure system, and we haven't done that. The ability for custom education, which was in the presentation, I think is powerfully important. I have 3 young girls. I went all through it. One of them did not learn in traditional ways. And I spent a lot of time working with a lot of counselors and a lot of tutors and school officials. And the basic point was different children learn differently, and they learn in different ways, and they hear things differently. With software, with technology, you can customize individual learning so it works for you in the way your mind works. So, invest in technology, access, first of all, through broadband. Let the private market know we're investing money here and there is a market, and you'll see innovation start to come to the marketplace. But somebody has to go first, and we have to start. And that's what we call the Smart Schools Bond Initiative is all about. A $2 billion investment, which is on the ballot this November. The voters have to approve it. You can't vote yet. They approve it, $2 billion statewide. Each school has an allocation, and that school can invest in a way that is the best thing for that school. So a school that needs access to broadband invests in that. A school such as yours that's already more advanced, you invest in what you think is the best product for you. But overall, we jumpstart the technology revolution in education, which is long, long overdue. The Smart Schools Commission studied this and came up with the best ways to do it. I am convinced this is the right direction for the state. I am convinced this is the single best thing we can do to get New York up that list in terms of performance. And if we start it, the private market will follow. And again, I'll end where I started. It's all about doing the best we can for our children who deserve the best. And this is, I think, the biggest single step we can take to make it happen. And I hope it happens this November on Election Day. I want to thank the commission again. They did fantastic work, and they were all very, very busy people. So that they took their time out to help us was really a very generous offer. And I want to thank the principal and the superintendent and the county executive for making the time. Thank you all very much.